Despite popular belief, Mary I never wanted to execute her cousin Jane Grey. When Edward VI died, he proclaimed his cousin Jane Grey as his successor, thereby surpassing both his sisters Mary and Elizabeth, in an effort to continue Protestantism within England. But Jane never wanted the throne. But of course a woman didn't have much say in anything in those days, and the men around her basically forced her to take the throne. Jane was quickly brought to the Tower of London in preparation for her coronation, but this never went ahead because Mary gained a lot of support from the people as the rightful claimant to the throne, and she overthrew Jane. Jane never left the Tower of London but went from future queen to now being a prisoner, and the support she had, including her own father, fled. But Jane, never even having wanted the crown, wrote letters to her cousin Mary explaining the situation. And even though Mary I's council was pushing for her to execute her cousin Jane Grey, Mary chose to believe her cousin. Mary was all too aware of how little power a woman really had, and she firmly believed that Jane Grey was innocent. However, shortly thereafter, there was a rebellion called the Wyatt's Rebellion, of which Jane Grey's father, Henry Grey, was a part of. This rebellion was literally to overthrow Mary and replace her with either Jane Grey or her sister Elizabeth I. The rebellion was squashed, but Mary had her eyes opened to the fact that Jane Grey and her sister were both threats to not only her reign but also her life. But still, Mary did not want to execute either of them. Instead, Mary sent Catholic priests to Jane in the Tower in the hope of converting her to Catholicism, which would have meant that Jane would no longer be a threat as a Protestant claimant to the throne. But Jane, being a very staunch Protestant, did not want to convert to Catholicism. She would have rather died than to sully her soul. And sadly, Mary was left with no other option. And yet she still had hope that Jane would convert, and Mary even pushed her date of execution back from the 9th of February to the 12th of February in the hope that Jane would change her mind. Sadly, Jane chose not to convert, and Mary had no other option than to send her to the block, after having spared her for 7 months and tried to save her life.